Hey, how you doing? It's Daniel Ruiz Tyson with another Writer's Life. I was going to say another edition, but I'm not sure what this is. 60 subscribers, just 940 subscribers away from being able to monetize this channel. Still haven't worked out whether it's a good idea to do this or whether I should be doing something else. I need something. I'm marooned on 450 nectar points. I need something. I need numbers to be going up, whether it's nectar points or subscribers to this channel. Anyway, this evening's post concerns small talk, duplication, and anecdotes. I think if you're a quiet person like me, you're going to need small talk to interact with a few people that you do interact with. It's good as well to have some anecdotes to hand. None of what I have in my armory is spontaneous. Anecdotes are tried and tested. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. I know who's heard what anecdote. What disappointed me today about the small talk, I'd broken or I was about to break what was a 32-hour vocal fast. I had to go out and get some milk from the newsagents. Doesn't like small talk. Was manning the shop today, so I knew any small talk was going to be minimal. I thought I'd do the bins while I was out there as well. This is Lambeth. Tuesday mornings, the bins get collected, none of which is of interest to you. So I left the flat and I was going downstairs and I thought I'd heard some work going on in the building, and I heard someone say something as I was going down the first flight of stairs. Didn't quite hear it. I continued making my way down, and then I ran into a contractor there, and I said sorry. And I think he said something along the lines of, "Yeah, don't worry, just a strange man on your staircase." Something along those lines. It wasn't funny, but maybe the moment needed something. Maybe he felt that we needed a moment to acknowledge his presence, because I obviously would have known that he wasn't someone that lived here. So that was fine. He wished me a good day, which was awkward because I was only going across the road and I was going to come back. It's one of them situations where you think, well, I've just met this person now. Do I really need to say, well, I'm only going out to the shop to get some milk? Is that just unnecessary? I was kind of thinking, well, we've done the exit greeting. I'm going to be back in the building within a minute. What do I say then? So I was kind of starting to worry about what I was going to say when I was coming back into my own building. Anyway, as I say, he probably felt the moment needed something. It didn't matter whether it was a funny bit of small talk or whatever. He gave me something. We didn't just ignore each other. So I was disappointed later on when I was back in the flat to hear him using the same line on another resident leaving the building or coming back into the building. I just thought, small talk, duplication. You would have known, if you're the contractor, you would know, surely. You'd have an idea that there will be some people in the building who will be able to hear you, who can hear any communal hallway chatting, and that they would have heard that duplication. And I heard it again the second time, three times in all, the same line, just a strange man on your staircase. I wonder if now that is a line he uses wherever he goes when he's in a block full of flats. So that kind of disappointed me. As an introvert, I do make a real effort with small talk. I will never use the same small talk on people, certainly not people that know each other, and I'll have an idea of who knows who, of the many faces that I recognize in the community. So I'll try and find something different to talk about if I know that the small talk is going to turn into a brief exchange. So that's how much effort I put into my small talk. I will never, for example, if I'm in the cafe, I will never use the same small talk with more than one customer on the same day, because I know that the waiters might have heard the same conversation between me and another customer. So they say that's small talk duplication. This guy has already used those lines. He's already had that conversation with someone else. Obviously, you could preface it with saying, well, I was saying just before you came in, I was saying to this other guy, the day's looking a little cloudy, but it's supposed to be brightening up later. So I could kind of, that's a bit of an escape route there. But I do try to vary my small talk. Similarly, with anecdotes, I don't have many. I'm not a raconteur. But I suppose I'm fortunate in that I'm not a cliquey guy. There is no one clique that I belong to. I've said this before. I mean, obviously, I've also said that I have far less friends than I used to. But when I was spoilt for choice with friends, there was no one group of friends that could say he's part of our clique. These friends, if they have photo albums or whatever people have these days, if there is anyone missing from pictures of their big days, whether it's weddings, christenings, birthdays, whatever, it's likely to be me. I'm that kind of guy. I kind of used to move around between various groups. I didn't want to commit to any, friends are friends, but I don't like cliquiness. But there was a memorable anecdote that I had in the mid-noughties. It was as a result of reading a brilliant book on the Chinese Boxer Rebellion, I think in the early 20th century. I think it happened, if I'm right. And it was something that stayed with me, which I found very funny at the time, very unusual, that, the Chinese Empress Dowager, who by then was, I think, in her 80s, she used to have a great many lovers. And apparently, according to the author, and you can actually, don't Google this, don't use Google, worry about your privacy. Use DuckDuckGo, that's what I always use. I never Google anything. The Chinese Empress Dowager used to have an oversized anus that she used to make her lovers tickle. It was her thing. It was how she got off. And I actually thought, that's really strange. I don't ever expect to read anything like that again. And that became an anecdote. And it became an anecdote I used regularly in my life at that point in the mid-noughties, when I was moving around lots of different circles. I was working as a football journalist at the time. I had an evening shift job. I was in regular contact with my various friends. I always trotted that anecdote out at any opportunity. It was it was a good icebreaker. Sometimes if I just met someone, I'd have to weigh up whether they were going to find that kind of anecdote offensive. But normally it went down well, but I would never use it with, say, two people that knew each other. Unless they were together at the same time, then I would give them both the anecdote. But I would never risk repeating myself, because I didn't want, so-and-so. I didn't want to run the risk of so-and-so running into so-and-so later saying, yeah, I saw Dan earlier, told me this very funny story. And the other guy says, wait a minute, was it about the Chinese Empress Dowager's oversized anus? I didn't want to run the risk of that. So I'm very careful with who gets my anecdotes. Likewise, 60 subscribers to this channel. Very few of you are going to know each other. I can run the risk of telling this anecdote again. My store of anecdotes, my store of anecdotes is relatively weak, I would say. I mean, look at this. I've just trotted out an anecdote that I was using 13 years ago. But if my anecdote is interrupted for whatever reason, and this is something that I do with other people, I think it's good etiquette to prompt them to complete the anecdote. I find that sometimes that doesn't happen with me, and I suspect that's because my anecdotes are weak, that I don't get the prompt. But I was really impressed a couple of years ago. I was working for the Man. I had a decent boss. I was telling an anecdote, not the Empress Dowager one. I was telling an anecdote which I had prepared earlier, just to fill any awkward silences. We got interrupted by someone else, so my anecdote was it was cut off mid-flow. And, when that happens, you try to pretend nothing's happened. You try to pretend you weren't even telling a story. It's not important. But she prompted me to complete my anecdote afterwards, and that really, really did impress me. That's an unusual quality in people. I hope it's one that you have. I hope you enjoy your evening. Subscribe, and I'll probably catch up with you tomorrow.